Welcome to Cheating Stories Star. My name is George, and for 7 years, I believed I knew everything about the woman I married. Then one drunken confession made me question our entire marriage. A hidden pregnancy, a forgotten secret, and a name from the past slowly revealed a truth I was never supposed to discover. What I found changed everything. Here's my story. My name is George, and I learned that the person sleeping beside me for 7 years had been living an entire life I knew nothing about. It happened on a Thursday night. My wife Claire came home drunk, not tipsy. Drunk enough to forget the careful version of herself she showed everyone else. She dropped her purse beside the kitchen chair and stared at me for several seconds. Then she smiled. That frightened me more than anger ever could. I was sitting at the table answering emails. She poured herself water with shaking hands. Then almost casually she whispered, "I still think about the baby." My fingers stopped moving. "What baby?" She looked at me. For 1 second, the drunkenness disappeared. Pure fear replaced it. Then she laughed. A nervous, ugly laugh. Nothing. I watched her walk upstairs. I didn't follow. I didn't ask again. I simply sat there in the silence, replaying those 2 words. The baby. Our marriage had never been perfect. But we talked about children. We tried. At least I thought we had. That night I realized something terrifying. Maybe I hadn't been trying to build a family with my wife. Maybe I had only been playing a role in a story she had written without me. And for the first time in 7 years, I wondered who the hell I had actually married. The next morning, Claire remembered almost nothing. That was convenient. Too convenient. She stood in the kitchen making coffee, wearing the same expression she used whenever she wanted to erase a conversation. I watched her. "You said something last night." She froze, only for half a second, then she turned around. "What did I say?" "You mentioned a baby." Her face changed. Not dramatically. That would have been easier. Instead, the color slowly disappeared from her cheeks. "I was drunk, George." "I know. That doesn't mean anything." I nodded. "Of course." But inside, something had already shifted. I remembered every conversation we'd ever had about children. Every doctor appointment. Every disappointed month. Every time Claire told me she wasn't ready. She had always said the timing was wrong. Her career. Our finances. Our apartment. There has always been another reason. I had accepted them because I loved her. That was my mistake. That afternoon, while she was showering, I noticed an old wooden box inside our bedroom closet. I have seen it hundreds of times. I'd never open it. This time, something made me. Inside were receipts, photographs, and medical paperwork. Most of it meant nothing. Then I found one receipt. A private women's clinic, 7 years earlier. The date made my stomach tighten. It was 3 months after our wedding. The same month Claire had told me she was just stressed. I stared at the paper. There was no name for the procedure, only a reference number, and suddenly I understood why she had been so afraid of my question. The baby wasn't imaginary. It existed, and somehow I had never been allowed to know. I didn't confront her. That would have been easy. Too easy. I needed the truth before I decided what to do with it. So I became patient. The kind of patient that frightened me. I photographed the receipt. I wrote down the clinic's name. Then I checked our old bank statements. The payment had been made from an account I barely used back then. But the transaction wasn't the strange part. The strange part was what happened 2 weeks earlier. There had been a hotel charge. One night. Downtown. I remembered that night. Claire had told me she was visiting her sister. Her sister had lived 3 hours away. I sat in my car after work, staring at the steering wheel. I didn't cry. I didn't feel rage. I felt something colder. Disbelief. Then I found another clue. An old email account on our shared laptop. There were only a few archived messages. One came from a man named Daniel. I knew that name. Daniel had been Claire's co-worker before our marriage. According to her, they had barely spoken. The email was dated 7 years ago. The subject line said, "We need to talk about what happened." My hands still went. I opened it. Most of the messages had been deleted. One sentence remained. "You promised he would never find out." I read it 3 times. Then I closed the laptop. That evening, Claire kissed my cheek and asked how my day had been. I smiled. Normal. She smiled back. Neither of us knew that the marriage was already dead. I was simply waiting for the funeral. I contacted the clinic. They couldn't give me medical information. but they confirmed something else. The reference number belonged to an appointment made under Claire's name. The date matched. So did the year. There was no longer any doubt. Claire had been pregnant. She had ended the pregnancy, and she had deliberately kept it from me. But I still didn't know who the father was. That answer came from somewhere I never expected. An old mutual friend named Marcus. I met him for coffee. I didn't accuse him of anything. I simply asked whether Daniel and Claire had been together before my marriage. Marcus stared at his cup. Then he said, "George, they never really stopped." That sentence destroyed whatever remained of my denial. I went home that night and placed the clinic receipt on the dining table. Beside it, I placed the printed email. Then I waited. Claire walked through the door. She saw the papers. She stopped. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked, "Was it mine?" Her lips trembled. She sat down. "No." One word. That's all it took. I felt something inside me go completely silent. She started crying. She told me Daniel was the father. She said she was scared. She said she didn't know what to do. She said she loved me. I listened. Then I looked at her and realized something. She wasn't crying because she had lost our baby. She was crying because she had finally lost control of the secret. And that distinction changed everything. Claire expected shouting. She expected me to smash something. She expected tears. Instead, I stood up. I already knew. She stared at me. "What?" I knew the baby wasn't mine. Her breathing stopped. I placed another envelope on the table. Inside was a copy of the evidence I'd collected. Bank records. The clinic confirmation. The email. Daniel's name. Everything. "I didn't come here to discover the truth," I said. "I came here to see whether you would finally tell it." She covered her face. I watched her collapse beneath the weight of a secret she had carried for 7 years. Then she said something I will never forget. "George, please don't leave me." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because I finally understood. For 7 years, she had decided what I deserved to know. Now she wanted me to decide what she deserved to keep. I took my wedding ring from my finger. I placed it beside the evidence. "I spent 7 years believing I had failed you." She looked up. "I thought I wasn't enough. I thought maybe something was wrong with me." My voice remained calm. "But you didn't just betray me, Claire. You stole my ability to choose. That was revenge. Not humiliation. Not destruction. Choice." For the first time in 7 years, I made a decision without asking her permission. I left the house, and I never went back. People think revenge feels powerful. It doesn't. Real revenge is quieter. It is waking up one morning and realizing, the person who destroyed you no longer has access to your emotions. Claire called for weeks, then months. Sometimes she apologized. Sometimes she blamed fear. Sometimes she blamed Daniel. Sometimes she blamed herself. I stopped answering. Not because I hated her, because hatred still creates a connection, and I wanted nothing connecting me to her anymore. I eventually learned that Daniel had disappeared from her life too. He had never wanted the responsibility. Apparently, the man she had chosen over me had only wanted the secret, not the consequences, not the child. Not her, just the hidden version of their lives. That realization should have made me happy. It didn't. It simply made the truth complete. I spent years grieving a family I thought I had failed to create. Now I understand. The family had never been mine to begin with. Claire had taken away my choice. But she couldn't take away what I became afterward. I became careful, quiet, difficult to deceive. I stopped believing that love meant trusting someone blindly. Sometimes love means giving someone the chance to tell you the truth. She had that chance. She chose silence. So I gave her the only answer silence deserved. I walked away. And this time I didn't leave a part of myself behind.